Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Before I start on the topic, I want to thank I Am Classic for helping me to understand the very basics of crypto. I want to thank you, the subscribers and the shares, for hitting the share button and getting me overnight from 2860 to 3020 subscribers and then some change. Thank you to those who asked the healer to heal my back. The healer answered, and even though I still have a mild soreness and I better not lift anything heavy until the end of the summer, I am in much better shape now, and I'm much more mobile and much more sooner than I expected to be. I want to thank you, Don Calypso, for the times you hit the share button. Thank you, Policeman 33, for the hookup to get me this logo. And ultimately, I thank the healer, the compassionate, the merciful, the protector, the avenger, the just, the judge of judges, and the king of kings. I ask him to accept my gratitude and my efforts to do well and my repentance for the wrongs I do and did, because I don't have anything else to offer, and I can never repay him. So this is part 2 of Edward Anderson is Right, F Street Culture. In part 1, I stated my agreement with Mr. Anderson, Hurricane Edward, regarding street culture. I spent time telling you about anti-intellectualism and what it's done even to another culture, a culture in which street culture is almost non-existent. And I did so because the fact is that street culture is more severe than anti-intellectualism. And that anti-intellectualism alone has done a number on Saudis, Bedouins, and on Mexicans. Anti-intellectualism and street culture have done a number on certain segments of the population. These things go before and are less severe than outright criminality, or crime, I should say. So, understand what it means to go against street culture. Firstly, we have to oppose even simple anti-intellectualism, and we need to defy it, not just not subscribe to it. And on one hand, everybody's not going to get a degree. That's not their fault necessarily. It can be stupid to pursue a degree for a lot of debt, even if your field of study is lucrative, because it can become non-lucrative and still cost you a fortune in debt. However, learning is never something on which to look down. Learning itself, education, formal or informal, is not something that is problematic. It doesn't automatically cost you common sense and wisdom. Of course, the eccentricities of someone like Urkel aren't to be upheld, but they're so unrealistic from jump. Being smart in general doesn't mean that you're going to be clumsy physically and knock everything over and have a nasally voice. It doesn't mean that you're a social misfit unless the society is against intelligence and learning, and that's us and a few other societies. Valuing knowledge and not assuming the worst about someone who attains it is the first step. The second and equally necessary step for our people is to start looking down on those who look down on learning. And truth is that one reason alone that thinking black men have every right to abandon the community isn't because crime is so common amongst the community, but simply because if one person gets too smart, too learned, formally or informally, there will always be someone that mocks him, but the community won't turn en masse against the ones who do the mocking. That's bad enough. Now, getting to street culture. It's not identical to crime, but it's too closely tied to it because it's the step that precedes it. You hang on the block when you should be learning, then you start proving yourself on the block, and let's be honest, you can't prove yourself without breaking the law somehow. This means that street culture is just the step preceding the crime itself, as I stated. So I mentioned anti-intellectualism in part 1 because that precedes street culture. If we disrespect that, then we will disrespect street culture, and it will disrespect crime itself. Street culture is when you validate even negative stereotypes outside of outright crime. And think of black men who don't insult this culture at every turn are owed something. Honestly, I've seen this even in professionals who come from the streets and then left them behind. How so? Well, they're quick to fight, to correct people for things they aren't saying, and to refer to their youth in the streets to prove their ability to fight and warn someone, despite that the person they're warning wasn't even looking for a fight. I saw someone make this error a few days ago. A brother in the UK discussed a colorism stereotype, but he wasn't endorsing it. He expressed sympathy. I know him. The one to whom he expressed it interpreted hostility and responded as such, and this is a professional who doesn't mean any harm, but this is the training. That's nigga training. We ourselves associate aggression with blackness, and that's bad enough. We think because we're black, we're supposed to get into fights more easily. No, the hell we aren't, especially with each other. This is why I turn and I say to us, if words without any hostility can get you toe-to-toe with a shine, then Zimmerman should have at least been fist-fought by now, and he hasn't been. That's why I side with sisters, except for a different reason. Stop with the bravado when it's not necessary, and if you aren't sure of its necessity, then assume it's not necessary. I mean, if it's not clear that someone means you harm or an insult or a threat, don't respond as if they do. Not getting buck on a ninja because he may not have meant an insult or a threat isn't being a punk. The benefit of the doubt is not cowardice. Someone telling you that someone else thinks you can't fight isn't the same as saying he himself thinks you can't fight and feels you're fair game for oppression because of it. You're not reacting because you aren't directly threatened or insulted. And if you're not reacting because of that, it's not weakness. We have to get rid of even that level of street culture. Violence and even threats of it are for clear-cut cases of self-defense or defense of someone else only if we're going to be civilized adults. The last thing I want to point out, and then I'm done, is the hashtag PHYW. And I'm going to give a shout out to LOM, Lion of MGTOW, Hurricane Edward Anderson, Cortez Smith, Don Calypso, Dr. Tiger Hassan Johnson, L.A.R. Movement, Still Movement, and BGS, and Mumia Obsidian Ali, just in case he mentioned it and I forgot, for mentioning the validity and importance of a safe environment in protecting black women and children. That acronym I just told you stands for Protect Her Your Way. Now, you understand what I mean if you're in my audience and you've been in it long enough, because you're not into street business beyond the extent to which you absolutely have no other choice. So you'd rather work to afford a safe environment than to try and be the most dangerous man in a dangerous environment to prove to a lady that you're a real man by acting bulletproof when no man will ever be bulletproof. So know that any sisters that don't value that kind of protection, including the ones from those safe environments themselves, want you to be a reactive attack dog, not a man. They don't want you to defend her on your own terms because your terms won't get you killed, and leaving behind whatever you have so she can spend it on another guy she likes more. This is what she's looking for. So you defend her on your terms and you don't just walk headlong into death. That means that you still are alive to have ownership over what it is you've earned and for which you've worked. She wants you to defend her feelings on her terms so that you die. There's a guy in, I think, Taylor, Mississippi. In Taylor, Mississippi, the people say that they see this creature they can't identify, and it's a cryptid, meaning it's not identified by formal science. And they describe it as looking like a werewolf in the woods, and it sometimes kills their livestock. Now, this is strange, I understand. Don't look at me. The people in Taylor say this, not me. I'm not from Taylor. The thing is that there's one guy that has land, I think it's there, and he said in an interview, if I'm not confusing two guys, that he keeps large dogs on his farm specifically for predators. And when these cryptids that we can't identify started showing up and killing cattle and horses, he got even bigger dogs and he paid dearly to buy them. Now, I mention this because the farmer's dealing with something very dangerous that he can't even identify, whatever it is, even if it's just a funny looking bear or a group of them. Now, this farmer said that he got dogs so that they could die in defense of the people in his family. He loves his dogs and he wouldn't mistreat them, but they're not humans and they're not his kids, and he wouldn't bring them in the house except for one exception he made because that dog proved to be especially loyal. He's aware that in the event of any large predator, especially the one they can't identify, the dogs are to die in defense of human lives. So granted, I realize the strangeness of that to which I'm referring, but I'm not here to debate about why there are even stories about werewolves to start with and why people say they see something that looks like it. I'm here to point out that sisters who look down on a safe environment as your protection are worse to you than the farmer and others like him are to their guard dogs. See, their guard dogs aren't supposed to go looking for fights to prove anything. And they're not blamed for surviving a fight with a predator if they do survive. They're not mistreated. But you, dealing with the Boonshika, the Bonquisha, and the Sophista Ratchet Sapphire Hybristomaniac, are supposed to look for conflict you can't win, start stuff, and then die in the process so she can spend what you leave behind without her having to work for it or ask for your permission to spend it. They got no respect for us, whether we become that attack dog or not. Unlike the farmer that buys and houses and feeds the guard dogs and then doesn't put all the defense on one dog by him or herself. Gentlemen, you're not a guard dog, let alone an attack dog, because those are two different things. A guard dog is to defend people and property. An attack dog is to attack. They cannot be befriended. They cannot form packs. You move, they come to kill you. That's an attack dog. So if you're not an attack dog, you're certainly not supposed to be a shield for women trying to start stuff and then get away with it so that they can feel better about themselves in comparison to Miss Ann. You're not swaggerillas. You're not idness. You're not the negative stereotypes. You're not the subhuman she sees. So protect her your way. And if she sees weakness in that, she's not the one to protect or for whom to provide or with whom to procreate, let alone for whom to solve any problems. And understand that you will take care of this at least 50% right off the bat if you start by opposing anti-intellectualism, street culture, and crime. Thanks for listening. Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout. Assalamu alaikum and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day.